China's economy is collapsing. China's annualized GDP growth rate has decreased to 0.4% from April to June 2022, which is the second lowest level since 1992. COVID and a declining housing market, slow economy recovery. Want to know why China's economy is collapsing? Watch the video till the end to know. But first, be sure to follow the channel so you can stay updated. Winning strategy comes unstuck. The Xi Jinping administration has locked down China's cities and tracked COVID-19 infections. The government's tactic of locking down even small clusters, often in towns of 10 million, is called COVID Zero. The approach may have seemed too rigid to some, but it's become China's winning strategy against COVID. In late 2021 and early 2022, the highly infectious Omicron variety made this winning strategy ineffective, and enormous clusters rapidly appeared. The Xi Jinping administration has locked down China's cities and tracked COVID-19 infections. Xi'an went under lockdown at the end of 2021, followed by Shenzhen, China's Silicon Valley, in March, and Shanghai in April. These lockdowns emphasize the negative repercussions of China's tight isolation policy. In Shanghai, there were more than 20,000 infections per day, and 24 million people could not go shopping for necessities due to lockdowns. The 2-month shutdown ended on June 1st, but its ramifications were significant. Economy activity shutdown. As in Wuhan 2 years earlier, the shutdown halted Shanghai's life and economy. The Shangjiang Delta, the center of China's economy, was rendered inoperable due to the widespread failure of expressways, container ports, and other distribution facilities. Because Shanghai is the largest container port in the world and the main link between the Chinese economy and the rest of the world's economy, the closure of the port affected the supply chain and the global economy. Due to delays in getting Chinese parts, Japanese companies that make cars, appliances, and electronics had to cut back on their work hours or look for other suppliers. In April, the Chinese government made many changes meant to speed up the supply chain and make it easier for goods to move. One of these policies included the creation of a whitelist of 666 companies whose interests would be given preferential treatment, including automobiles, medical supplies, electronics, and everyday necessities. As a result, since May, factory output and shipment volumes have consistently increased, but the harm brought on by the lockdown was too great to be quickly repaired. The Chinese Statistics Agency said on July 17th that the GDP for the April-June 2022 quarter increased by just 0.4% compared to the same period in the previous year, which is a considerable drop from the 4.8% growth seen in the January-March quarter. The recession impacted the entire east of China, the core of the country's economy. Jiangsu and Zhejiang provinces experienced negative 1.1% growth and 0.1% growth, respectively, while Shanghai was particularly heavily impacted, plummeting 13.7% from last year. In reality, all of China's main cities suffered severe damage. Beijing's capital enacted strict COVID controls, which locked its economy to fall by 2.9% year over year, even though it wasn't as bad as the lockdown in Shanghai. Supply chain affected. Others might call Shanghai's shutdown bizarre. However, the COVID-19 pandemic's rise to such severity may be attributed to a man-made process. Let's now examine how these incidents have impacted the world's economy. Given how labor is dispersed internationally, the lockdown's impact on Chinese and overseas enterprises will vary by industry. In electronics, China's domestic supply chain for parts and materials is the world's most extensive and dense. This makes it hard for companies to move production to other places. To maintain market share, China must produce cars and other commodities locally. While these businesses were harmed by the shutdown, the difficulties of relocating overseas means that we are unlikely to see a rapid shift in industrial hubs as a result of COVID Zero. However, firms have already started moving overseas in sectors where they are not required to be based in China and can do so if the conditions are right. For instance, final assembly of tech products. As a result of skyrocketing production costs, labor shortages, and a greater emphasis on economic security, the most recent series of events is another disadvantage of doing business in China for these industries. After the lockdown was lifted, there was an evident rise in the number of foreigners leaving the country. The Chinese government keeps saying that its COVID Zero policy is still in place, but it will work to ensure that chaos like this doesn't happen again. Even though the government is doing its best, if there are more outbreaks in sectors where a presence in China is now required, investors' views of the country's business climate could become too negative. This could cause these companies to leave the government more quickly. China's other malaise. Lockdowns weren't the main reason China's GDP collapsed in June 2020. The housing market crisis that began last year has hurt China's economy. If COVID-0 was an acute sickness, the property market is chronic. To get out of the economic slump caused by COVID-19, the Chinese government passed a substantial financial package in the June quarter. This led to a new property bubble in the summer. These regulations were too strict and produced a property market crisis in 2021. Realizing how critical the problem was, the government started to fix the problems caused by its policies to tighten money late last year. It is trying to help the housing market by letting provincial governments loosen rules about home loans. The government's overzealousness left a dangerous legacy. Residential property sales fell by 31.8% in value and 26.6% in floor area in the first half of 2022 compared to the same time in 2021. The floor area of new construction permits decreased by 35.4% and land sales decreased by an astounding 48.3%. 1/4 of China's economic growth comes from real estate, so the fall is significant. Worrying fallout. The real estate collapse has had two negative flows-on impacts, which are even worse. First, it has reduced provincial incomes from land sales. Public land sales, which account for 30% of the local government's revenue, decreased by 31.4% in the year's first half. This comes when governments face reduced VAT receipts and raise public work programs to support the economy. For the finances of the provincial government, this means crunch time. China has to grow its economy in the second half of 2022, so regional financial woes are worrisome. Second, poor developer cash flows are halting building on pre-sold flats. Fearful buyers have quit paying their mortgages. This implies that a large number of bank loans could default. China's economy has grown in the past because of the real estate market, but bubbles have yet to be stopped. Real estate prices have soared, creating a divide between the haves and have-nots that equals the US. Over 90% of the Chinese households also have their homes. Real estate constitutes about 2/3 of household wealth, so a significant drop in property values will provoke public discontent. What if Chinese government doesn't do anything about big developers going bankrupt and stop building units that have already been sold? In that case, the Chinese property market will cool and become unstable. The Chinese government's projected 5.5 economic growth target is suddenly becoming increasingly unlikely to be met. In the fall, Xi Jinping confronts the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party, when he may serve a third term as a head. As a result, Xi will try to do all in his power to prevent economic growth from decreasing to 2% or 3%. There is only monetary policy left. There are exceptions that fiscal expansion will bring results, but there are also fears that it may compound long-term issues like excessive debt. Xi cannot have his cake and eat it, no matter his route. As the Xi administration enters its third term, it faces a difficult road. So, this is it for today's video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon, and also like and share the video.